Welcome today. We are here in hard-hitting New Britain. This man needs no introduction, but I'm gonna give you one anyway. From Scranton, PA, Pennsylvania, legendary track coach, legendary track athlete, basketball coach, educator, just a man of the people. Growing up not just in Scranton, Pennsylvania, but coming here to New Britain at a young age, finding his way, and becoming Coach Shaw.
Yeah.
The owner, the organizer, the man of the people of the Osgood Shootout, Mr. Darwin Shaw. How you doing, Coach?
Man, it's my pleasure being here. Jay, I'm glad that you called on me to sit down with you and have a little discussion. All of that stuff, the introduction was great. I am Scranton, Pennsylvania. Everybody thinks I'm from New Britain, but I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I just landed in New Britain.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I put it. Did some great things in New Britain, but I always give where I'm really from, Scranton, I give them the credit because that's my birthplace.
Got you. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's about on the Bigger Play series. It's the bigger play. It's not just what plays people see, it's the bigger play.
Right.
What people don't see. Just like what you have been through becoming Coach Shaw. In becoming, I want to take it back to the beginning, the grassroots, which is the theme of everything of what we do now,
Right.
especially what you do.
Right.
So let's take it back from the grassroots of New Britain, but bring it back to Scranton, PA. Talk to me about that. How was it growing up?
So growing up in Scranton was always great for me because, family, all my family was from there. Friends were like family. My friends' parents were like my parents. The upbringing was great. Unfortunately for me, my mom passed away at an early age, which uprooted me and my two brothers and sisters up here to New Britain, Connecticut, to be raised by, extended family members. In particular, my aunt Thelma, who was the one that provided for us and kind of directed me and my brothers and sister, where life was going to go for us, along with my uncle Curtis, my aunt Ski, my uncle Erwin. So we had extended family. It was tough leaving Scranton, especially at an early age, because when you leave at an early age, that's all you know.
How old were you?
So when I left Scranton, I was 9 years old. My mom passed away when I was 9 years old, and life for me was great up until that point, and then coming up here into New Britain, into a totally new environment, had to get a whole set of friends. The trust factor, not knowing people, in New Britain definitely was way different than Scranton. So, little things that I was accustomed to doing in Scranton, I couldn't do in New Britain. What I mean by that is just trusting people in general, because everybody, when I grew up in Scranton, they was like family. So coming up here at an early age, you don't know the same people. You don't know their types. So that was a little bit difficult, and then always missing back home in Scranton, because my grandmother and grandfather was the foundation. Had a father, but not really knowing my father well, did not deter me from becoming something. Mm-hmm. I never looked back at that as something that was against me from becoming successful, because I had the foundation, and like I said, it was based on my grandparents, and especially my grandmother, who just was a model citizen, and all of the values that I learned from her, I carry them throughout my life each and every day, because there's something that I've learned from her that on a daily, it always stays with me. Mm. So that was important for me to understand that I was representing not only myself, but representing what she taught me growing up as a young man.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the relationship with your father. How was that, not having him around at such a young age? And particularly just being a man, a lot of people, men have a lot of responsibility. We all have a responsibility, but men, I think we're born into responsibilities that we don't even realize.
Right.
And the common thing is you have to become a man, and not having that direct male figure in your life up to the age. I can relate because I didn't meet my father until I was 8 and very absent in and out of my life. We're good now. We have a relationship, but just it was hard just trying to navigate through the world, especially just the world. A lot of people for self, and there's a lot of bad influences and bad energies out here, as well as there is good energies, but just not having somebody that you can talk to every day. How was that, just trying to find yourself?
I think trying to find myself, you know, just because my grandfather was relevant. My grandfather was like my father. My father was around, but he wasn't really in my life. My mom kind of raised me and my siblings, and I never really looked at it as him being absent from the household because we've been with her forever. And if we wasn't with her, we were with my grandmother and grandfather. So the father piece wasn't really, you know, it really didn't affect me as much as it might affect me in the times today, because it's a whole different world. But I would say this, the friends and the family that I was around, most of us was without fathers. So it really didn't hit us like you need this father figure in order to become a man. We always raised by women. So it really, like I said, didn't really affect me. And to be honest, I think in my lifetime, I probably had like 3 conversations with my father before he had passed away in my whole life. And I could kind of go back and I know what every single one of them was about. And it was nothing about, you know, I'm sorry that I really wasn't part of your life the way that a father should be. I never held it against him for not being there. I just was used to him not being around, and I looked at it that way. So it really didn't affect me, like I said, like it affects, I think, the young person coming up today. Did I miss him? I missed some of the teachings that you would get from a father. I missed a lot of that, but I was getting a lot of it from my grandfather. And then when I would come up here to New Britain to visit, I was getting it from my uncles, my Uncle Curtis, my Uncle Whirlwind. So we were getting that teaching from them, although I was without the father. So like I said, it really didn't affect me that much.
Got you. Talk to me about your mom. What's her name and how?
Oh, Carolyn. My mom was named Carolyn. My mom passed away she was 26 years old. And it was a sudden death, which took it, you know, it took a toll on me and my brother, 2 brothers and my sister, because, you know, one minute she's there, the next minute she's gone. And that's who I relied on for my whole life, you know, up until that point. So then one day when you wake up and she's not there, and it hits you like, you know, at a young age, I'm 9 years old, and I'm like, how am I gonna navigate my way through this life where there's no mother? And the mother was the one that set the foundation. She was the mother and the father. Early age, she had passed away. Like I said, it was tough on me, but I didn't really realize it, how much I missed her, until it was time to come up here. Because now we gotta get uprooted to come up here. And the questions were, why are we going up there? And basically because my grandparents were too old to take care of us, so we had to come up here and be raised by extended family. And you know how that goes. You sometimes wonder if you're really welcome, or, you know, are you in the way? Because, you know, we was raised primarily by my aunt, and she only had 1 child. And now we come in and there's 3 of us with her, and my sister's cross town with another family, my uncle and my aunt on the other side of town. And my sister was the oldest. So once we like separated from her, it was a difficult time, because we're wondering why is God taking us through this path? I mean, why do we have to follow this path? Why couldn't we have stayed on the path that we was already on, which I thought was great? But he knew better, you know. So as I got older, I kind of started to understand, you know, there was a reason for him to take us from Scranton, Pennsylvania to New Britain. Yeah, it was tough, but as life went on, as much as I was missing her, there was different opportunity up here that I did not see in Scranton. Number one, the diversity was totally different. I had a lot of black friends in Scranton, not many white friends, although there were whites. But then when I got up here, I had them from both sides. I had black friends, white friends, and Latino friends. You know, when I was in Scranton, there was no Latinos. There was none. Yeah. So that was an eye opener for me to come up here and just be around a different group of people at an early age. And I think if I remained in Scranton, I was going to miss out on some of that diversity because there wasn't too much of it. I'm sure it's changed around a whole lot now, but I think the fact to grow up with different ethnicities and different races and different cultures was a good thing because I learned a lot about different people, which I truly believe wasn't going to be the same as if I remained in Scranton. So it was tough. My mom, we was real close. And once she was not there no more, there was many days where there was a lot of crying and a lot of wondering whys and like, how am I going to get through this life now with you not being there? Because she was always the safety blanket. You know, when things weren't right, I could always go to my mom for whatever, for the guidance, for the support. And then once she was no longer, you know, then I relied mostly on my grandmother. And I was angry because I didn't understand why God took her away from my life at such an early age. And my grandmother, who was a deep Christian, was the superintendent of Sunday school. So I stayed in church, and she told me I just got to trust and believe in the path that God is going to set forth for you. And you just got to be true to it and believe that there's a reason why everything happens in life. And over the years, I really started to understand, and I got closer to God. He directed the path, my path, and it kept going. And my strength and faith in God is like no other. So I truly believe that everything that happened in my life at an early age happened for a reason.
With that being said, happening, and you mentioned previously, you know, why did they change the path that we was on? A lot of times, I like to believe that the path is unknown. You just have to walk it. So this is a part of your path.
Right.
What you thought was just that way, there was a detour, but there's still a path to keep moving forward. Speaking of paths, you've been a runner. Most of your life.
I've been
run a lot of paths as
Yeah,
well in your own lane. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about how you got introduced to track, who introduced you to track and field.
Oh,
and
man.
How the love came about for track.
Well, what happened was we used to just run in Scranton. I mean, we used to just race in the neighborhood. And that was one good thing that happened when I got up here to Connecticut. You know, going to Jefferson Elementary School, we used to have races before class started. And I was used to that. I was used to racing. And I think, well, when I was in 6th grade, because we went all the way up to 6th grade for elementary school, and at Jefferson, I was the fastest in the school, which was great because when you're the fastest in the school, everybody knows who you are. But I had an incident where I kind of got out of track because there was this young lady that was fast. And everybody wanted, you know, since I was the fastest boy, they wanted me to race her. And looking back at it, it probably was a blessing, but it was a mistake because I was so like, can't lose to a girl. You know, how am I gonna lose to this girl? And you know, they was egging me on to race her, and she was calm. She was like, I just want to race you. They say you're fast. She used to watch the races. And one day we actually lined up, and she beat me. And that was tough. That was tough because now all of the boys are laughing at me because I lost to the girl. And I'm saying to them, well, I beat all of you guys, and she would have smoked you if you ran, but, you know, you didn't run. And now they looked at me like I was like a failure, but I wasn't because they were more of a failure because they couldn't beat me. But the funny thing, Jay, about that is I ran into this young lady, the same girl, maybe 15 years ago. I was doing a book signing for my book, Becoming Coach Shaw. And I was at the New Britain Museum, and the girl was in the audience. The same girl that I raced against, who I hadn't seen for years, and she was in the audience. And after I, did my little talk or whatever, she came over and she was like, "Oh man, Bubby, I see you became an All-American in college and all of that, and you did well in track. I'm so proud of you. And I remember when I beat you. What could I have been?" And she kind of had me with my mouth open, like, "We really gonna go there now?" Because I see her in the audience. I'm looking and I'm like, "That looks like Lynette. What would she be doing here?" And it was her. And then after we had the conversation, and of course she reminded me of beating me that day. And she said, "Yeah, I remember you didn't want to race, and then you stayed home for a couple of days after you lost," which I did because I told my aunt I wasn't feeling well. I had some kind of illness, but I just was embarrassed. And I didn't want to go back to school to face all of the people that were laughing and doing all of that kind of stuff. So it was good, but that was my beginning of track. And then I went to junior high school and ran for our junior high school team. And by no means was I a star or anything, because at that time, now people are starting to catch up with you. People are starting to catch up with you. People are starting to catch up with you. And then by the time I got into high school, I didn't have no desire to run or do anything, because now I'm working an after school program. I was here. I was working, I think at the time it was a CETA program. It was something with the city of New Britain where you could work 2 days after school, and I was like a custodian helper. So I was working 2 days, and by the time I got to become a senior, I decided I wanted to run on the track team. I transferred from one school to another school. I transferred from Pulaski High School to New Britain High School, and New Britain High School was the team. They was always winning the state championships, had great runners and throwers and jumpers. And I came over and decided to come out for track my senior year. And I really believe if I didn't go out for the track team, number one, there's no college for me, because that's the reason why I got into college. Number two, I probably was going to be working in one of the factories in the city, because New Britain is called the hardware city, and we was filled with factories, from Emhart to Fafner to Stanley Works to New Britain Machines. There were so many factories, and I just saw my path going through the factories. But I took a chance and ran on the track team. Like you said, the path was there. God created the path to have obstacles for me to run into these obstacles, but to rely on Him for His strength to get through those obstacles or get past those obstacles. So I ran, and we won the state championship. I took second in Class LL in the long jump, and had a great track coach, a Hall of Fame track coach, Coach Black, and I give him all of the credit, because he was not only a great coach, he was a great person. And he told me back then, "I'm going to try to give you an opportunity to go to college, to run." And I was like, wow, I didn't see that coming. And one day downstairs in the office that I'm teaching at right now I teach in that office, and this was back in 1977, he called all the seniors in one at a time. And he called me in and he said, "You want to go to school?" And we're in June now. We had just won the state championship. Most of our guys were going to college. They was all set. So when he called me in, he said, "You want to go to school?" I said, "Yeah, I don't mind." And he just picked up the phone. And he called this guy on the phone, who I don't know who it is at the time. And I'm sitting there, and he said, "Hey, such and such and such and such." He said, "Listen, I got this guy that's not very talented, but he'll work hard." Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there like, he's talking about me, not very talented, but he'll work hard. Mm-hmm. And he said, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. And before you know it, he said, "Okay, let me get this stuff. Send me the stuff, and I'll get it to him, and we'll send it back." So he gets off the phone, and he says, "You're all set. My friend is going to send me school application. You're just going to fill it out, and you're going to be all set." I said, "Coach, I don't have any money." He said, "Oh, grants will take care of it. You might have to take out a little loan, and that's how it went. So I walk out the door. He told me to tell the next person, who I can't remember who it was, and everybody's out there. They like, yo, what happened? So what Coach Black say? I said, oh, man, I'm going to school. And they said, oh, wow, where you going? I said, oh, man, I don't even know. I didn't ask him. And he was a tough guy. So I didn't want to go back in there because I was afraid, like, Coach, where am I going? But they like, how you going to school you don't know? He said, you got to go back in there and ask him. So I knock on the door with one of them little soft knocks like, hey, Coach, excuse me. I said, but where am I supposed to be going? He said, oh, you're going down to Kentucky. And I said, okay, thanks. And when I walked out, I was like, how am I going to get down there? I don't know anything about Kentucky. I know my aunt is going to be like, I ain't got no money. So what do how you going to go to Kentucky? So I get home and I tell my aunt, I say, yo, I'm telling I'm going to go to college. And she said, we ain't got no money. How you going to pay for it? I said, I don't know. The coach told me, she said, I hope he's right because we ain't got no money. And that's how it went. And I went down to Kentucky State, and the rest was history. The guy that he was talking to is a guy named Dr. William Exum, who became my advisor and was the best person I met in my life. Outside of my grandmother, everything he told me back then was going to come to light, and it came to light. And just a little bit on Dr. Exum, he was the first black football player to play for the University of Wisconsin in 1936, the first. So, he's telling me, he said, you follow my lead, I can get you through and you can go back up to that sorry city of New Britain, which he always used to say, that little sorry city of New Britain, and become something. So him and Coach Black had a relationship because they both were managers on the 1972 and 1976 United States track and field Olympic team. That was their relationship. That's how they became friends. So when Coach Black sent me to him, it was all done. He said, you follow what Willie tells you, this is after I get in, and you'll be all set. So make a long story short, I go down there. He told me one day, he said, listen, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I don't know. He said, maybe you can go back there and be a teacher or something. He asked me one question. He said, how many black teachers are in your, your school district? And at the time, there were 2. And he said, you can go back and make an impact. He said, forget about the sports. Forget about being an athlete and running track and all of that. I got to get you set up to go back there to make something out of your life and to inspire others to follow your path. And he told me I was going to have 3 or 4 names. He said, people are going to call you your nickname, which is Bubby. Some of them are going to call you Mr. Shaw. Some of them are going to call you Coach Shaw, and some of them are going to just call you Coach. I'm 17. And to this day, that's what they call me. I mean, most of them call me Coach or Coach Shaw. And it was that little message that he gave me back then, which I couldn't see then. I'm like, yeah, they're going to call me all these names. How they going to call me all these names? And that's what he said was going to happen. It was almost like he was God. And only knowing me over a semester, he could see this. But the key, Jay, is this. He told me how important my education was going to be for me. He said, you can fool around and not be educated all you want. You're not going anywhere in life. And he said, or you can follow the plan, do what you have to do educationally, and you'll be productive in your life. And then he gave me one example. He said, one of my closest friends was the best in the United States and was the best in the world. And he said, and when he was an Olympic man, he was an Olympic champion. He said he went over and ran in the Olympics in Germany, and then when he came back, the university he was at declared him ineligible. He won 4 gold medals. He said, so if they didn't care about him, they sure ain't gonna care about Darwin Shaw. And I'm sitting there like, who is your friend? He said, Jesse Owens. I said, wait. He said, Jesse Owens. He said, Jesse was at Ohio State. I was at Wisconsin. We became good friends, and you got to remember back then there wasn't a lot of blacks doing stuff in colleges and all that. They became big, best of friends, and that was his message. He said, so if they didn't care about Jesse Owens, declaring him ineligible, coming back here to race against horses and all that kind of stuff instead of capitalizing on what he did after winning 4 gold medals in front of Adolf Hitler in Germany. Do you really think people are going to care about Darwin Shaw? And that put me on the path to take my education serious. So that was the path.
Got you. Talk to me a little bit more about Kentucky State.
Man.
How was it, just in a sense of how was the athletic competitiveness, and then under the guidance of a legendary coach like that, having experienced all-time iconic figure for what he's overcome. I don't think people have ever even seen the movie Race. They should watch it.
Yes, for what Jesse's overcome.
Yeah, for what he's overcome.
So real quick with Kentucky State, oh man, it was an eye-opener. Number one, it's an HBCU school.
Yep.
I knew about black colleges, but I didn't really know about a black college until I got there.
Yeah.
I had no clue what was a black college. So when I got there, the eye-opener was just the culture of the people. Everybody talking in different slangs, everybody dressing differently, the sayings that they had, all that stuff was wide open to me, because you got to remember, when I went down there, I was the only one. I didn't know one person. There was another guy from here that Coach Black sent down there. God rest his soul. His name was Van Dorsey, who just passed away last year. He was an All-American high jumper, and he's from my school, but the upperclassmen were not there yet. So I'm there during freshman orientation. I remember it like it was yesterday, because I left on August 14th, 1977. That's when I left New Britain to go down there. And when I flew down there, Coach Black never really told me what it was going to be like. He just said, when you go down there, there's going to be, you'll have Kentucky State Police, and they'll get you to campus. So, back then I was a flyer. So I flew in, I thought I was like a big shot. And I get outside the terminal, and back then you had to walk inside the terminal. It's not like now where the plane gets right up against the stairs. So I go in, and I come out, and there's a Kentucky State police officer. And me just not being bright, I went up to the officer, and I said, yeah, I'm trying to get to Kentucky State. Can you get me there? And he looked at me like I'm the state police. But I didn't realize that I was supposed to be going to the Kentucky State University Police. I'm asking a state trooper. And of course he looked at me crazy like, man, you got to find some kind of service to get there. I'm not the one that provides a service. So that was an eye-opener, because I just didn't understand what I was doing then. And then I get on campus, and I had a dormitory that I reported to, and it was a line, and it's all black people. There's like no whites when I first got there. I'm like seeing no white people. And I was like, I wonder if there's any whites anywhere up in here, because where I'm coming from, New Britain, I saw whites and, blacks and, like I said, a few Latinos. So finally during the orientation, we go to some classes, and now I see some white professors and I see some other white students. But I think the eye-opener was just not being prepared. And then you don't know how to talk because you don't want to say the wrong thing. And not that you're worried about offending anybody. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I really don't know if I fit in, because all the people I knew were not there. I was the only one here. Down there. And then I ran into a guy from Brooklyn who ended up being my roommate. And the guy becomes one of my best friends from Chicago. And me and him was on the same path. He's like, let's check it out for a semester. If it don't work out, I'm transferring out. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what my mind process was. But now, freshman orientation is over. But throughout that week, there was only freshmen. So we used to go, watch the band. And I was like, what's the big thing about watching like band practice? I'm coming from New Britain where we had a great band in high school. So everybody's like, yo, the band practicing tonight. We got to go see the band. And I was like, not really knowing what all the fuss was about the band. And when I go over to see, with some friends, go to see this band practice, there's like hundreds of people there. And I'm like, all these people here to see the band? And then when they started playing and doing all the stuff they was doing, that was my first experience. Like, oh, wow, this is Black college. And that was a eye-opener in itself, because it just was a big thing, and I was looking forward to that. Now, fast forward, now school is starting. The upperclassmen are in, all the freshmen are in, now we're going to class. And I went down to Kentucky. I think I had like 7 pair of pants and maybe 10 shirts. And I wore khakis. I mean, I ain't had no money. Now we going to class, and my man from Chicago, he stops by the room. He says, hey, man, you ready to go to class? I'm like, where you going? He got a suit on. He said, man, I'm going to class. I said, wait, in a suit? He said, man, this is how we roll. And then I get out there, and some of the other people I knew from Detroit, they had on suits and gaiters, and I'm like, with little low-top Chuck Taylors and a little polo shirt and some khakis, so I kind of felt like out of place. And then I walked in the classroom, and everybody's dressed. That was an eye-opener for me, because I'm like, I ain't got clothes like these people got clothes, so how am I going to be down here competing to stay in this atmosphere? And that's kind of how it went, and I navigated my way through that. The Black college experience was the best experience I had in my life, and that's what my book basically is all about, becoming Coach Shaw. How I became who I am was through the Black college, and the instructors I had, great instructors that were hard. I had some tough ones that I didn't understand why they were so tough, but they were preparing me for up here. And I had this one teacher who, I just wanted to get into her, because she made it so difficult for me as a student. And now I'm in my last year. So I'm just gonna skip forward. I'm in my last year. I was All-American in the long jump the year before, and I was trying to repeat as an All-American, and I'm doing my student teaching. And she sent me to this school in Lexington, Kentucky, where the University of Kentucky is, like 20 minutes from my school. And it was like it was a mixed school with blacks and, not Latinos, blacks and whites. And we went through like 6 weeks in the classroom that she was teaching us how we're supposed to act when we actually do student teaching. Now it's time to student teach. And she came up there after like the first week, and she told me, she was sitting in the bleachers, and there was another young lady I used to ride up there with, because she had a car. I used to just have to give her gas money every week. And the teacher would come in, her name was Mrs. Wright, real tough lady, and God rest her soul, she's passed away. And she said, after she observed me for the first time after like 2 weeks, she said, Darwin, I want you to come and see me by the office, 4 o'clock. We got out of school, I think, at maybe 2:30 or something. So I go by and see her in her office on Kentucky State's campus. And she said, let me just tell you this right now. There's no way you're going to be a teacher after what I witnessed there today. And I'm sitting there like, and I'm not saying this, I'm like, well, to myself, what did you witness? Because I thought everything I did was cool. She said, so, you better get yourself together. And she said, and have a good day. That was it. So I go back to the school the next day, and I go to my advisor, who was a Kentucky State graduate too. He's an older guy, Mr. Adams. And he said, how did it go with Miss Wright? And I said, she told me I better get myself together or I ain't gonna get no teaching certificate. And he said, what does she mean by that? And I said, I don't know, you tell me, you're my supervisor. Am I doing something wrong? He said, no, I think you're doing okay. So to make a long story short, she comes back 2 weeks later. does the same thing. She says, you see me come by the office. So in the meantime, as we're riding back, I say to Terry, who was with me, I said, Terry, how Miss Wright was with you? And she said, oh, she told me everything is excellent. I'm doing a great job. She said, you're going to be a great teacher. Why, what's she saying to you? I said, she's telling me I ain't going to get no certificate or nothing. But me and you are teaching together. And she said, well, what she said you're doing wrong? I said, I don't know. But if you ain't doing something wrong, how am I doing something wrong when we're both teaching the same stuff? And she said, I don't know, but you got to see her. I said, I got to see her today. So I go in there for the second time. She sits me down and she says, you improved this much. Jay, I'm like done. I don't know what to do. Yeah. Now there's only 2 weeks left before it's like either I'm going to get my certificate or I'm not to be a teacher. So I go back to Adams and he says, so what happened this time? She said, I improved like this much. He said, Darwin, I don't know what to do. I said, well, I done put all this time into school and now it's at the end and I ain't gonna, get my certificate. This is like a waste of time. And I had a big meet. I think I was going to Tennessee. Had a big track meet. I couldn't even concentrate on the track meet because I'm worried about, what she's doing. So I went down there. I think I got like 8th place and had one of my worst jumping performances I had in a couple years because I was just stressed out. So we come back, I'm trying to do everything the right way for the final 2 weeks. She comes in that last week. She does the same thing. She observed the class, stops by and says, come by and see me. And Jay, this is it. So I go in there, my fingers are crossed, my toes are crossed, my arms, my legs. I'm like, this lady is dealing with my future, as far as an educator. Because if I fail, then I'm not going to be teaching. So she said, Mr. Shaw, let me just start off with that. And she always called me Mr. Shaw. Dr. Exum did that because he said, that's what they're going to call you one day, so I want you to start getting prepared. 17 years old. I'm like, yeah, okay. So she says, Mr. Shaw, let me just tell you this. She said, you have been doing an excellent job. She said, you're all-American track athlete. I didn't want you to feel that just because you were good in track, that you can skate through and do minimal work and get your little teaching certificate. She said, so I made it hard on you. I had to make you think that you wasn't doing well to get you better, although there was no better you could get because you were already doing well. Mm-hmm. And she said, I told you that you were talking soft early and you needed to raise your voice because your voice is a weapon. And she said, and you improved that. And that's why to this day I still talk loud because I think about what she was saying. And she said, you are going to be an excellent teacher. The people in wherever you decide to teach, whether you go back to Connecticut or find a job here in Kentucky, you are going to be excellent. And she said, and I just want to thank you for being such a great student, and I wish you well. And of course I hugged her, but I walked out that door and I wanted to come back and I wanted to be like, you had me on stress for those 6 weeks, stressed me out, telling me what I wasn't going to become. And then I was grateful because after that, when I became a teacher, all of those lessons that I learned from her, all of that stuff came in. All the stuff I learned from Dr. Exum, all of that stuff came right in the plan. And look at now, I'm going into year 39 of teaching. Who would have thought? A guy growing up loses a mother, no father figure in the picture other than my grandparents and my grandfather and my 2 uncles, and I'm dealing with those kind of students that have excuses, and then when I share a little bit of my story, they're like, oh man, Coach Shaw, now you inspire me to do something with my life because of what you've done. And Jay, to be honest, that's how my book came about. My book came about because I was sitting right here in this same gym and I had a young lady who was in my class who was a student in every class. And for 2 weeks, she didn't bring a change of gym clothes. She had no clothes. Her grade went from an A to an F. And one day I just went up to her, and I'm not going to say her name, and I said, you know, how are you just letting yourself go down the drain like this? I mean, you're an honor roll student. Now you got all F's. And she said to me, sitting right over here, she said, Coach Shaw, I don't care nothing about school. And I said, wow. She said, look, you're a teacher, you're successful. You know, you probably ain't been through what I've been through. I said, well, what's going on? She said, well, you know, my mother and my little sister left and went to Florida and left me and my father. And we were living with my father's mother. And after 2 weeks, she kicked us out of the house. She got tired of us. So I'm currently still sleeping in a car. And I looked at her and she said, so I come here and you talking about gym? She said, I ain't thinking about gym. She said, I'm coming here. I barely have something to eat. I eat the cafeteria food and stuff is hard. And she said, but you know, look at you. You're successful. Life has been good to you and you probably never had any problems. And I said, oh, I had some problems. And she said, like what? And I said, well, you know, one day my brother was walking to the bathroom, middle of the night, like 1:32 in the morning, and he came back in the room and he said, Mommy's laying in the middle of the floor and I can't wake her up. And he said, come on out here. So I went out there, we couldn't wake her up, and called the neighbor, the ambulance came, my mother was dead in the middle of the floor. The girl started crying. And she said, oh, wow, Coach Shaw. She said, how did you get through that? I said, I trusted God. I never made excuses, and I wanted to make something out of my life, to make my mother happy, to make my grandparents happy, and anybody that was part of my life. I wanted them to know that I followed their advice and that I can become successful in whatever it is I do in life. But I have to remember tragedy, and I have to remember there's always going to be obstacles in the way as you go on in life. And I said, and I got around all those obstacles. And God placed those obstacles in my life for a reason. He placed them to see how I could get through it. And I always relied on him, and that's how I got through. I said, so in your case, you got to trust in God, and you got to believe that there's a brighter path for you. But if you give up on yourself, like you are currently, I said, how are you going to know? And she turned it around. And she got back on path, and she got housing, and she ended up graduating from school and doing something productive. And I never saw her again, so I don't even think to this day she even realizes that she was the inspiration that helped me write the book because of what she said. And her last words was, Coach Shaw, you should write a book and talk about your life because you have a story, and people would like to hear your story because they don't know what you've been through. And that's how the book came about.
So talk to me a little bit more about the book as you brought it up, Becoming Coach Shaw. Just overcoming what you came, going through college, very successful in sports and everything like that. Also available on Amazon right now.
Yes,
so
it still is.
Definitely. When was the book written?
Book was written in 2015.
2015.
Yep.
Okay, so since then, you have countless book signings, everything like that.
Yeah.
How has the feedback been since you have shared your story? As we all have a story to tell, and like you said, just the lessons you learned from school, your voice is a weapon. However, you took your voice and put it into actual words for people to spread and share. How has that now?
I think the biggest surprise, number one, is when I wrote a book, I called on a friend of mine who was helping me with this Osgood tournament. And we're in year 2 of Osgood. And I'll get down the road with that, but I called on this young lady called on me and said she would like to help out with the Osgood. It was the second year we was in the park. And so I'm just gonna fast forward way forward. So that was in 93. In 2014, I go to her and I said, and her name is Carrie Beckford. She's a professor at the Tunxus Community College. And I said, Carrie, I'm thinking about writing a book. And she said, oh, you know, I mean, what's your story gonna be? And I said, I don't know. And she said, well, let me know when you get back to that point. So this young lady I ran track with at Kentucky State, God rest her soul, her name was Jessica Thomas. and she was a professor at Eastern Kentucky University. I think she was the head of the English department. So back then, you know, there's no social media or anything. I ended up getting their phone number because I called the directory at Eastern Kentucky. I hadn't talked to Jessica in many years. And I said, hey, Jessica, it's Darwin Shaw and so. And she said, oh my God, how's it going? I said, after we went through all the short stuff, I said, Jess, I'm thinking of writing a book. What are the steps that you take when you're writing a book? And she said, oh, first thing you got to do is you got to develop a query letter. I said, what is a query letter? She said, a query letter is something simple, what your book is going to be about. And I said, oh, she said, you have an idea what it's going to be about? I said, I don't know, maybe the struggles I went through in life to become who I am. And she said, well, you know, send me some little facts and let me put together a letter for you. And I sent her some little facts, and she put together this query letter, and I gave it to Carrie, and Carrie said, oh, this sounds nice. This, you know, she said, but I really ain't gonna be able to help you at this time because I'm so busy, you know, doing stuff, but I know that it's gonna be good because I know that when you set your mind to doing something, you're gonna make it happen. And the very next day, Carrie called me the very next day after telling me no the night before. And she said, you know what, Darwin? I thought about it, and I thought about the Osgood. When I called you to help out in 1993, and that thing is still going, and it was like 2014. Mm-hmm. And she said, and she had left it, Carrie might have left in like 2004 or something. She said, this is on a path that's gonna have nothing but greatness. And she said, and I'm out. She said, you keep doing what you're doing, but I'm glad for the time that I put into the Osgood with you. And I started thinking about that. This is what she said. I started thinking about that, and I said, I want to be a part of the book project. And she became my co-author, and that's how it happened. So I would tell her stuff like I'm talking to you right now. She's writing and taking notes, and before you know it, she said, now here's our test. She said, this is going to test to see if your book is going to be worth something. The query letter is done. She said, you got to find 2 people that know you very well. And she said, it could be teachers, anybody in the school, your friends, but I prefer it to be somebody in the school. She said, I wrote something up. There's like 3 pages. They have to read it, and they have to tell you after that they wanted to read some more. If they tell you, oh, that's good luck, then we know it ain't a good book. But if they tell you, why did you stop? I wanted to read more. So I picked one teacher in here that knew me well, and a secretary. Robin Shaw, who was the secretary, no relationship, and the other teacher was a teacher named Annie Parker. And one day I just gave him like 3 pages to read. And I said, tell me, you know, what you think about this. You know, you got a couple days. And Robin, who was the secretary, she read it. And when I saw her the next day, she said, Darwin, she said, listen, why did you stop? I wanted to read more. That was it. And I said, oh, she said, what are you doing? Are you going to write a book? And I said, I'm thinking of it. She said, well, this start that you got, I want to read more. That was a thumbs up. Now I go to the next lady. I go to Annie. And she was a special ed teacher. And I said, Annie, did you get a chance to read? She said, yeah, 1 minute, hold it. She was giving her class instructions. She said, after she did the instructions, she said, oh my God, what are you doing here? And she said, basically what Robin said. She said, do you have more? I want to read more of it. That was the clue. I went back to Carrie. I said, Carrie, they both wanted to read more. She said, we're on the right path. Let's get going. And that's how the book came about. So it was those 2, Jessica for the query letter, the inspiration of the student, and then it just took off. So now the book is ready to be released. And this was another piece that inspired me. We had these 3 doctors. They wrote a book from New Jersey called The Pack. Our school got 2,500 books for every student in September. This was before I'm thinking of even doing a book. All those students got a copy of the book called The Pack. So we go into the auditorium. Now it's the end of the year. It's like May. The 3 doctors come to the school. They do a question and answer session in the auditorium. Not only with the students, but in the evening, they did it with the parents. The students' job was to read the book, and we had these classes where the beginning of the day, maybe once a week, you had to meet, and the whole school project was to read the pack. So now those guys come. So they answering questions in the auditorium, and I'm with 2 of my former athletes, to Bucky Jones, who now is our, at the time, was our football coach. Right. And another guy was my student and player, was Mike Peterson, who's a poet. So the principal comes out along with the athletic director, and me, I say to them, I say, hey, man, why'd you have to go get them guys to write a story? And you bought 2,500 books? And I'm just joking. And I said, us 3 could have wrote a book, talking about myself to Bucky and Mike. Mm-hmm. And they started laughing. And I don't know what that meant, but the next day I was down in the weight room, and the principal used to work out in the weight room. And the athletic director too. So they was down, and they jokingly was like, oh yeah, Coach Shaw, you still thinking about writing that book? Who's gonna be your writer? Joking. And God came in with a vision, and before you know it, all the stuff that I told you prior to that, the quarry letter and all the other stuff, it all just came in. And one day I went to him when the book was about ready to be completed, and they had no clue I was writing. Nobody really knew. And I said, my book is almost done. And they was like, you serious? And I said, I did write a book, and I was in the process. So 3 things happened. Their inspiration, the student, but even prior to that, I was the MC for an NAACP event. It was called the Freedom Fund event. Mm-hmm. So as the MC, and I had never been an MC, they want me to make the crowd laugh and have fun and all of that. So I'm walking there with my girlfriend, and I got this, this big garbage bag. So I told my friend that owned the print shop, I said, man, I gotta be this MC of this event, NAACP event, and I gotta get the crowd moving. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. He said, oh, I got something for you. I said, what you got? He said, I'm gonna make a book cover and put it on a book, just a regular book, and I'm gonna make a poster with you holding the book. You're gonna get up there and you're gonna act like you wrote a book. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So he makes this book cover called Overcoming the Odds. Got my picture on the book cover, and it's called Overcoming the Odds. So I'm walking up with my girlfriend, Renee, and she's asking me several times, what do you got in that? Why are you carrying that garbage bag? And I said, oh, it's something for the presentation. Well, what is it? So I get there, I set up an easel, I put the bag, the poster on the easel, but I never pull off the bag, the garbage bag. So now the audience is there. She's sitting there. We got a new minister at our church that actually got us going back to church, Reverend Morris. And he's sitting at our table. So now the event is starting. They introduced me, and I said, oh, before we start, let me just show you what I just did. I wrote a book, and I pull off the cover. And my girlfriend is in the front row, Renee, and she's looking like, when did you write this book? And what is your book about? So I introduce a person for an award or something. I go back to the table, and she says to me, she says, sweet, when did you write this book? And what is your book about? And the minister, Reverend Morris, God rest his soul because he's passed, he said, oh, wow, coach, I didn't know you wrote a book. And I was like, and I never told him, because when I came back to share that with him, and she's asking me, what is the book about? I had to go back and introduce somebody else for something. So every time I came back to sit at the table, it was only like 20 seconds, and I had to keep introducing. My mistake then was to tell the people And this was my plan, and I never did it. I said, oh, there ain't no book. I was just joking. My friend made a book cover, and this is how it happened. Yeah. So now we're walking out, and I'm walking with Renee, and I said, Renee, there's no book. She said, well, what was all that? I said, that was just make pretend. I just had to get the crowd going. And surely, God showed up, and everything I told you prior to that, that's how it happened. So that was the beginning, and then a book happened. So I know it was supposed to happen. It was supposed to happen because of the steps that I took, listening to him, not being an author, not being a good English person or anything. And how am I going to write a book? And I know that's what Renee was thinking. How'd you write a book? And who proofed it? And how you know all your stuff is right in there? And that's exactly how it came. Mm-hmm. And that was the inspiration. So the book comes about. And I'll just say this real quick. Now you have to send out the transcript of the book to people to read. Number one, they got to proof it. Mm-hmm. So you got to send it to three people. But on top of that, you want to have somebody endorse the book. So I don't know. I think I got Stan Simpson, who was on Fox 61. But the pack had this lady who's a famous author in the world, Lisa Fraser Page.
Familiar with her. And
she says, my girlfriend knew somebody that knew of her. And she got the ball rolling. And the person got me in contact with Lisa Fraser Page through emails. And I said, I know you're busy, but you're a friend of somebody I know, and said, you might be able to take some time to look at the transcript. So I had, we sent her the transcript. And maybe a month went by, we don't hear from her. And I know she's very busy because she was the author. And this is how it's funny, Jay. She was the author of the PAC book, and those doctors come here. So look at how God is lining stuff up. Mm-hmm. So, reach out to her, month goes by, there's nothing. My co-writer says, have you ever heard anything from Lisa? And I said, I haven't. And I said, but, I don't want to bug her. She said, it's been a month. I don't care how busy she is. She can get back to you and say she can't do it or whatever. I contact her. She said, and at that time there was no Coach Shaw. It was Darwin or whatever. She said, I've been very busy, but I promise I'll get to it this weekend. Mm-hmm. She fooled around and read it after 2 days, and she got back to me and she said, you got something there. She said, it's a great story, definitely inspirational, and you know me, I'm like, you was able to read the whole book in 2 days? And she said, I went through the whole book. And I told my co-author, and she said, oh, wow. She was ecstatic. Mm-hmm. And she said, now here's what we want to ask her. Can we get her endorsement on the book, on the back of the book? Said it's probably going to cost us a lot of money. I said, well, I ain't got no money. And she said, well, let's just see, maybe, it's not going to be that high. So I get back to her and I said, Lisa, is it a way you can write a little blurb? And she said, I'm honored to write a blurb. And I said, how much is it going to cost us? And she said, for you, nothing. She said, because I had you sitting for over a month. She said, I ain't charging you anything. I don't even want to tell you what I charge people. But for you, I'm honored to write something. And she sent over an email. She's on the back of the book. So that was all a blessing. So that's basically how it all went. And, I've been back to my school to speak. I think I've been back there twice. They had this event where they was picking like alumni to come back to the college. And you had to nominate who would you think that is a good alumni to come back to talk to the student body. And, you had to have people write letters on your behalf. And I think I had maybe 30 letters that people wrote, how Coach Shaw would be an inspiration to go back to the college and speak to the students and all of that kind of stuff. And that happened. And that was one of the best experiences of my life, just to be able to share my story from where I came from. To go back to my college was like unbelievable. So God has been good, man. And if you go to Amazon, I think at the time there was like 140 reviews on Amazon. And you know, when you write a book, you don't know what you're gonna get. So 140 reviews, I'm still being told is like a big number. So the book has been successful. It's like I think everything is a 5-star except for maybe 4 out of the 140 reviews. Maybe 4 are 4 stars. Everything else is a 5 stars. So I praise God every day for the path that He put me on to write a book. Because I'm like, man, who gonna read my story? And little did I know, and you said it at the beginning, everybody has a story. And I guess my story was inspirational enough for people to want to read my story and see that this Coach Shaw or Mr. Shaw or Bubby or the path that I was able to ride got me to who I am today.
I love the fact that you use the word becoming, because like you mentioned earlier, like I wasn't an author. At one point in time, the most iconic author was not an author. At one point in time, a coach was not a coach. At one point in time, an athlete was not an athlete. Anybody can do anything that they want to do. It's just a matter of once you get into it, do you fall in love with it and love the craft and go through the process. With that being said too, some of becoming, there's some things that people may not know about you as well, because just coming up how we come about, you know, we fall victim to a lot of things, you know, violence, drugs, incarceration. You've had your share of some of that as well.
Yes.
I'll let you speak on that. And
Which is, and you know, you never want to give so much because you want them to read the story, but I'll tell one story.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to just keep it short because I want them to read into it. But I did go to jail one weekend for doing something I had no business doing. And I was in there for 2 days. And the 2 days that I was in there, all I did was pray. I'm 18 years old. And you know, I'm in a city, Lexington, Kentucky, and we're in like a holding cell. And there was maybe 100 people in there. You know, they just walking and pacing, and I'm sitting there with my friend, because there was 4 of us that was involved, and I'm sitting there with them, and you watching people just pacing for hours, because we ain't going nowhere, because court ain't until Monday. So, you know, this one particular man, you know, after a while you get up because you just going crazy because you're in this little area, but there's 100 people. And, you know, struck up a conversation with a guy, and he said, hey man, what you in here for? I said, oh man, my friend did so-and-so and so-and-so. And he said, where you from? I said, oh, Connecticut. He said, oh, you up there up north. He said, oh man, for that? And I'm not telling you what it was. He said, maybe 15. That's all you'll probably do is 15 years. I said, what? He said, yeah, because you coming up there from the East Coast, coming down here to Kentucky, they don't like that. So he said, you might get 15. Jay, I immediately went into pray mode, big time praying. And at the time, I used to, you know, use profanity. I never drank or I never smoked in my life, but I tried to fit in, so I used to swear a lot and try to get the crowd laughing or whatever. And then that same day, another guy, you know, we walking, another guy, because that was what everybody did in there. Yo, man, what they get you for? And we acting like we hard-time criminals. I'm like, ain't no big criminal. We just in here. Something happened. We in here. So I told this guy, and he said, oh, no, you be cool. He said, I said, well, one cat said 15. He said, no, they ain't gonna give you 15 years for that. He said, probably 5. Again, I said 5, and that was it. And man, I prayed and prayed, and I was the first one out of our group to go and see the judge. And you know, when I came out there, and he talked about the charges, and since I wasn't the main person, it was somebody else, I just got a fine. And he said, you know, you just have a fine, and you cannot leave the state of Kentucky until you pay the fine. And the fine, I remember that like I remember the date I left. It was $178. And I paid that restitution fine. As soon as I got out of there, paid that fine, the rest was history. From that point on, I'm around my friends, my close friends, my whole life changed. I used to be the life of the party, joking all the time, swearing, using profanity. All that stuff was over. Because I prayed to God, I said, God, if you get me out of this, number one, I ain't swearing no more. That part of my life is over. Trying to be somebody that I'm really not, that part of my life is over. He took me and he said, you fulfill this promise right here, and you watch the path that I create for you moving forward. And I haven't used profanity since I was 18 years old. I'm 65. And when I tell this story like to the kids, they like, oh, Coach Shaw, yeah, okay, yeah. I'm gonna believe that. And it never slips, and Jay, it never slipped. I stayed true to it. It's something that I never thought I could ever do, was to stop the way that I was running. But when I'm in there and I'm on my knees in the corner and just praying to God and saying, Lord, get me out of this, and I promise I'm gonna be this or try to be that. That's exactly what I did, and he's put my life on nothing but, of course there's still obstacles, but he had enough faith in me that if I trusted in him, he was gonna create something that was gonna be great for me, and I owe all the credit in the world to God for number one, for putting me in that situation, because he put me in that situation for a reason, because maybe I thought I was bigger or better than I was. And that was an eye opener, and then I had to come to him. And that's what I tell my kids and my students all the time. You need to trust in God, because he's the one that's gonna lay down the foundation for where you're going with your life and what's ahead. He already knows what the plan is. You don't know. So you need to trust, and that's how it went,
I love it because a lot of people, you can't upset God's path. You can't mess it up. It's already
Not
the
his.
path. It's already the path that you going through that experience was part of your path.
Right.
It was a matter of how were you going to react to that. Very similar to what you've experienced through your life. There's a lot of times through your life, as many people have, we like to call them defining moments, but they're all moments.
Oh, that was a defining moment.
Where you can choose to react how you want to react.
Right.
Going from the loss of loved ones, going to being uprooted, going to where a teacher is just trying to elevate you to a higher tier than what you've already are doing. A lot of people don't realize athletes have it very hard in school, especially top athletes. The expectation
is higher.
Is immediate. It's already at the highest.
And that was her message, because she thought that just because I was that athlete at the school, that I was just going to use that and coast all the way through. And I'm so glad that she took that approach, because not that I was that kind of person anyway, but she took that kind of approach to say, I got to motivate him and make him think that he's not all of that he thinks he is, which I didn't think anyway. And that was it. So that was the obstacle that I had to get through. And of course, I got kicked off the track team for that incident. And I won't go into that, because you got to read all in the book with all of that. But all of that was all part of it.
Not to go into that, but how was your experience now? And you could talk briefly on it, because you may talk about it more so in the book. But in the book, how was your experience outside of the book? How was your experience just seeing your path taken away? And how was your experience now of because you were lost again? How did you try to find yourself? What were some of the things that you immediately in that time frame started? Because a lot of people could have revolted back to their old life. Start drinking, doing other things. You can get very lost very easily.
Yep.
Talk to me briefly about that. What was your mindset?
I think when it happened to me initially, I was going to church. I grew up in the church, but I really didn't understand God. And sometimes you think that, no matter what happens in your life, there's reasons why it happened. But I didn't put all my faith in God. I was like, but this one, because it was so serious, this was, this was in the same mindset when I lost my mom. So now I lose my mom, and now I got to navigate my way through this world without her. The first one that loved me and I loved her, now she's gone. Now I'm about to lose the opportunity of education, number one, and then I'm letting Coach Black down, who sent me down there, who in his words was, go down there and make us people in New Britain proud of you. And I went down there and did the complete opposite. I go down there and get in trouble and get thrown off the track team. So once the word gets out that I did all of that, it's like, you know, how am I going to navigate through? That was the moment where I got close to God and said, I need you. I need you to get me back on track because I'm off track now. Now there's no track for me to run. So, I mean, I don't even feel like I need to be there because I went down there to be a track athlete. And I said, God, I don't know where my path is going to go from here, but I need something. You know, I need you to help me do something. And little do you know that next year when I came back, the track coach had left that kicked me off the team. He went to Old Dominion. New coach comes in. I go up to the coach. I tried to explain what happened to me, why I got kicked off. And this was Coach Frost. And he said, listen, you're wasting your time. I don't need to know what you did. You are welcome to come on and try out for the track team all over again, and we'll see where it goes. Just having that second chance again was great, because with that second chance, I ended up qualifying for the NCAA championships with that second chance. And then I was like, oh my God. And I'm getting ready to go to California for the Nationals. But I go into Pennsylvania, I'm proud because I'm going to NCAA championships. And I fooled around and was playing basketball with some of my friends and cousins when I went back, because I went there instead of coming to New Britain. And I pulled my hamstring.
Go to Jesse Owens.
Pulled my hamstring. The NCAA, I was going there in 2 weeks. I pulled my hamstring. I was no good. I called my coach, who was down in St. Louis at the time. I said, Coach, I got bad news. And he said, what is the news? I said, I pulled my hamstring. I never told him I was playing basketball. He said, I said, and I know I'm not going to be able to compete. I know because it's going to take a while. And he said, well, you know what? You earned the trip. He said, we're going to go out there, because if you don't go, I can't go. So he wanted to go to California too. And it was just me and him. And we got there, and, I was nursing it and trying to get it better. It never got better, so I couldn't compete. That was my inspiration the following year. In the following year, I came sixth in the country in the long jump. Made All-American. Top six was All-American. And he left and went on to another college, and another new coach came in, which made it my third coach in the 4 years. And he named me captain and so, and things went great. I became All-American again, school record holder, and I just couldn't thank God enough for giving me, like you said, I was off track, but he put me back on track, and he said, if you just follow this, you'll be all right. The all right, I never expected all of this stuff to follow. And when all of that stuff followed, I was like, how can I go back another way and not even have God in my life when he's provided so much for me? And that's why he never leaves my side, and I'm never outside of his vision, because I just trust in everything that he's not only provided, but what's to come, because there's more to come. And I'm not a person that tries to ask what is next. I just sit and I just ride. And whatever comes, comes. And that's how I am, man. I'm just, I'm grateful for all that he's done, but I changed little parts of my life that I thought was cool, and it really wasn't. And since I've done all of that, he's given me nothing but a great life.
Amazing. Transitioning now, you're here, you're an educator here in New Britain. You get into coaching, obviously the track team, and you also, what made you get into the basketball?
Man, The basketball was something different because I used to coach Park and Rec.
Okay.
They used to have a summer league in Park and Rec. And I used to coach the, high school guys that just from the neighborhood, guys that I knew, little guys coming up. And I used to coach them, and we used to win these summer leagues all the time. So in '84, the guy that was here left the job, freshman job. And the guys that played for me said, Coach, man, the high school job is open. You can come in as a freshman coach. And they told the head coach. And the head coach brought me in for a little interview, and he said, hey, listen, the guys are telling me that, you might want to come apart and be a part of the program, and that you know what you're doing. And you got to remember, we're playing in the playground. I don't know much about basketball. We just had real talented teams that was beating everybody. And I ended up getting a job. And that's how my coaching started. So I did 1 year of freshman. The next year, the head coach left. The guy that was the JV coach took over the varsity position. I became the JV coach. And I've been coaching JVs now since '86. And what are we in, 2025? And that's just how it went. So my teams have been successful. My teams have won over maybe 520, 530 games, and everybody thinks Coach Shaw is like this icon of a basketball coach. But really, I learned on the fly. I didn't play in high school. I played in junior high school, but I wasn't no outstanding player. But one thing I have been good at is I know how to respect kids, and I know how to get them to respect me. And as long as I got those two things, they'll do anything for me, I'll do anything for them. Things have been great. It's not always about the X and O's, although I know X and O's now because I've been in a position for 40 years. Mm-hmm. But that's not how I came in. It's just respect, knowing where these kids are coming from, and knowing how to maybe propel them to do something greater in their life. And basketball is just a vehicle to get to somewhere to make you a better person in life. And I've been blessed and fortunate to be in this position that long.
Love it, love it. Talk to me about what came about the Osgood Shootout. How from you transitioning, obviously you have a bunch of championships from the track and field side, as well as the basketball side as well. But transitioning now to the community, the Osgood Shootout started in '92, correct?
Started in '92, and I started it with, it really wasn't nothing that I really started because I was with three other guys. Mm-hmm. So what happened was there was three other guys. One of them is currently with me still. He's been with me since the beginning. And they were running a league at Osgood Park. It was just a summer league at Osgood Park. And one day I was up there and just watching the park and watching the basketball, and I just said, man, I went to the other two guys that were running the league. I said, man, we should start a little tournament. And, they was like, how many teams? I said, man, first year, maybe we do like 6 teams or something. Let's just play it in the park. And they was all down. Mm-hmm. And then after that 1 year, my whole vision changed because we kind of kept it local. And I said, you know what? I got a different vision now. Now I want to branch out. And I told him, I said, listen, I'm going to branch out because I want to bring some teams in from outside the city. And one of them stayed with me. Another one was, on the fence. He decided not to come. And then another one did decide to come. So 3 of us was together, but I told him, I said, this is the way I'm going to run it. I'm not going to run it that same way. I said, and at the time, one of the guys that was a mentor for me had passed away. And I said, I want to put it in his name. He was from the Osgood Park area. I said, I want to put it in his name. And the first year we did it was called the Osgood Park Shootout. I said, I want to change it to the Charles L. Mumford Jr. Shootout. And I said, so you guys can stay where you're at, or you can come with me, but this is how I want to elevate it. I want to go this way. And they decided to stay. That second year, we had the first NBA player was a guy named Jay Edwards. Jay used to play for University of Indiana, was like Big Ten Player of the Year. He just latched onto a team from New Britain because he was up here in the summer. It was either a reunion or something, and he was on the roster. And you know, I know who he is because I'm a basketball guy, and I'm like, how you get Jay Edwards from, you know, Indiana? Oh, he's so-and-so's cousin, and you know, he's gonna play. And then from New Haven, we had Theron Mays. Theron was with the 76ers by way of Florida State. So now I got New Haven, I got Bridgeport, I got Waterbury, but not really Waterbury. I got Waterbury, but not a power Waterbury team. So people just started coming up year 2. Marcus Camby comes out of high school, comes out of Hartford Public, going to UMass. He's in the tournament. Tournament went good. Now we go to the next year. Everybody wants to get in. Now I'm hearing from teams in Springfield, teams in Boston, teams in New York, where I'm from in Pennsylvania. And remember, there ain't no social media, so it's word of mouth. I'm telling some cousins in Pennsylvania, get a team, I'm running this tournament, and they come up from Philadelphia. And now the tournament is on. Now the atmosphere in the park is like they say today, it's off the hook. Because now everybody is up there. And everybody's just saying, hey man, win that basketball tournament. The guy across the street, the package store guy, is cleaning up, making more money than you could imagine. My friends are doing a fish fry, hamburgers and hot dogs. The park is packed. I got one of the guys that I grew up with that used to be the coach at Harvard. He's a couple years older than me, was a coach at Harvard. And then he was at, he played at Dartmouth, but now he's the grassroots guy for Reebok, for inner city. So he says, oh, Bubby, man, you got this tournament going. I'm gonna give you some certificates for your champions. They'll all get free Reeboks, the team that wins. And that's when they had the pump, the D Brown pumps. So he gives me the certificates. Winning team gets free Reeboks. They get a certificate, all they gotta do is mail it in, Reebok sends them stuff. So now the tournament is like blowing up. It's like 95. Now it rains. One day it rains. We got a team from Boston up, a team from Rhode Island up, a team from New Jersey up, and the local teams from Connecticut. So it starts pouring rain. We ain't got no site. Now you cancel it till the next weekend. A lot of players that was playing were in college and they couldn't come back the next weekend. So we had no site. So the guys from Waterbury, now they offer a gym at we went to the Y in Waterbury to play the championship. It was Waterbury against Hartford. Last time the shootout ever went somewhere else. But I didn't have no site and we just want to play the games. Wasn't thinking about the crowd. Who cares about the crowd? Now we got to get the tournament over with. And after that year, we played 2 more outside, and then it just shifted inside because now I got players coming saying, oh man, sure, I like what you got. I'd play if it was inside, but I don't play on the concrete. And then I'm thinking, you know, they put a nice fence up there. Now I got all my sponsors coming up to check out the event. And this was probably more key than the weather. All these people that were donating to the tournament, I couldn't control the outside noise. So I'm talking to you as a big sponsor, and everybody got weed up there, everybody's smoking. I'm talking to you the big sponsor for whoever, and they coming over while I'm talking to you, not knowing you. They like, so who played next? Everybody's puffed up. And now you're sitting there like, I'm donating to this. Everybody's smoking weed everywhere. I don't want to be affiliated with this. So I couldn't control the environment. So I decided it's time to come inside. And at the time we had a superintendent who was real good, who was from the assistant superintendent. He was from the area. And when it rained that one year, he said, Darwin, go ahead inside. You know, I didn't have to pay nothing. We just took the crowd inside, played, and from that point on, we've been inside from 90, 99 and on. But of course, it's, I pay a lot of money now to have it. But I had to just change that atmosphere because I couldn't control it. And just imagine now weed is legal. Everybody be smoking, Yeah, the players are secure because they're inside the fence, but it was the atmosphere that I had no control. For our area, it was great because you got all the housing projects. The cars were parked all the way up in the projects. Yeah. It was packed. It was the best atmosphere because everyone is there. Everybody from all over the state was coming to represent their cities. Bridgeport, like I said. Now Waterbury gets down. Waterbury wants to come in. After coming up to observe it for 2 years, now they win 5 in a row. No one could beat them. Minister Society was their name. They're the ones that put Osgood on the map because they came in, they was veteran players that most of them all played in college, and they were unbeatable. Then everybody wanted to try to get to beat them. Then they got older, and they wasn't, the next group of Waterbury came. That was Ryan Gomes and them. They was running it, saying everybody's like, Waterbury got the talent, Waterbury got the talent. So you had Waterbury, New Haven. And that's when it just started growing. And then the pro players started coming in, and it was a difference. It was a changer. So our first big player was Kimba. So Kimba comes in because at the time Kimba was seeing a girl in the city who was close to one of my daughters. NBA is on strike. UConn just wins it. Kimba's in the city. My daughter says to me one day, she said, Daddy, Kimba want to know if you can open up the gym for him to shoot around a little bit. And I was like, Kimba Walker? She said, yeah. He sees so-and-so. And I said, yeah, tell him to come down. He came down. We had a conversation. He came with the 2 brothers of the girlfriend who I knew. And I said, hey, Kimba, man, anytime you want to come in, you just tell me. And before you know it, he's calling me up and he said, Coach, can you open up the gym? We used to have runs right here in the gym, 15 people. Nobody could believe Kimba was in it. So that year, I'm at the movies. Me and Renee went to see a movie. It was on a Thursday, Shootout starting on Saturday. And I had asked Kimba, I said, Kimba, could you play? He said, I don't know if I could play, NBA's on strike. But really, technically I can because we're on strike. So I'm in the movie, forgot what movie he was seeing, and I get a call from his girlfriend's mother. I'm in the movie, and she says, Coach Shaw, Kimba's able to play. He wants to play on Saturday. And I told Renee I said, I got to go out in the hallway and take this call. And I came back and I said, Kimba's going to play in the shootout on Saturday. And she said, how'd you get him to do? And I said, that was the call just now. And that's how I got Kimba. Yep. So prior to that, Ryan was coming. Ryan used to come in here and work out when he was in high school. I used to bring him in with Wayne Simone, who I knew well. Wayne was Connecticut Select. Ryan would come down and Ryan would come in to work out. Then Ryan started playing. Andre Drummond, I knew Andre since Andre was 13 years old. And now Andre's, playing in here in the shootout and before he goes to UConn. As soon as the shootout was over, he announces that he's going into UConn that same August. And then it just started going. And then the Osgood just went from 1 year to 10 years to 20 years to 25 years to 30 years when I thought it was over. And that's when Byron came aboard. And Byron called me. His father came up to the tournament. And I announced it to the crowd. This is it. Last shootout, thank you for coming for over 30 years. And all the people were trying to tell me, oh, Coach, you can't stop it. It's good. Don't stop it. What do we got to do to keep it going? And at that time, I just was exhausted because I'm running around trying to hustle, get sponsors to pay money and so and so. And again, God shows up. At the end. Byron Jones' father, who I knew well, said, hey, Coach, Byron wants to know if you can give him a call. And what Byron told me, he said, I don't know, but I said, he's in camp. He was in Dolphins camp. He said, yeah, but he asked me if I can get your number to give to him, and he'll call you sometime tomorrow. And I fooled around and gave him the number, and just like he said, the next day it was during some kind of break he must have had. And he said, Coach, I just got to ask you a question. He said, I'm in the middle of training camp. And he said, but my father told me you're going to end the Osgood. He said, why are you ending the Osgood? I said, oh man, Byron, I'm just tired of hustling. I said, I'm tired of begging people for money. It was a good run, 30 years. He said, so are you stopping because you're just tired of it or other reason, or is it a financial? I said, yeah, really the money, because I'm tired of going to people. He said, so you got all your paperwork or how much it costs to run it and so and so? And I said, I do. He said, well, send it to me. Let me take a look at it and maybe I think, maybe we can do something. I sent him all the paperwork with the cost of everything that I do. Mm-hmm. He called me the next day and he said, Coach, I looked at all the paperwork. He said, listen, if you want to keep going, I'm your backer. You ain't got to go begging people for money. I'll do it. Mm-hmm. That's how the Osgood kept going. So this is Byron's third year of doing it. And he was a blessing because, again, God showed him to me. And that's how it's still going.
So now that we're going into the 33rd year,
yep.
God year, talk to me about what the Osgood does more outside of just the basketball game.
Oh man, I think the biggest thing is it just brings the community of people together, regardless of race, because we have blacks, whites, Latinos, you name it, they're up here. But when I started it, I didn't want to be like any other team that just does a basketball tournament. What is the purpose? And I wanted to give out a scholarship to a person from the area that's going on to college. Not a lot of money, kind of like a scholarship I got. I got the same type of scholarship from the person I put the shootout in his name, Charles L. Mumford Jr. I got a scholarship when I was a senior, $250 to go to college from his father. So that was something I didn't expect, but I always, when I was in college, that always stuck in the back of my mind that this guy gave me some money for what? I don't know what it really was for. And why did I get selected? Maybe he knew something I didn't know. So I figured I wanted to pay that forward by just selecting a person, giving her $250, and she did the same thing. Well, why are you honoring me? And it was just like, because I know you're a good person. I know you're going to move on to college and you're going to do something great one day. And you'll always remember that this is not a lot of money, but at least you were the first recipient. And from there, it's grown. One scholarship at $250. Now we give out, last year we gave out 10 $500 scholarships. This year we'll give out 9 $500 scholarships. And the blessing with all of this, Jay, is the money, we don't have to raise the money because now the families contribute the money. So my closest friend, God rest his soul, him and his brother, his father was the guy that got us all into sports. When his father passed away and I was running Osgood, they both came up and they said, we want to give $1,000. We want to, do a $500 scholarship for 2 people, just in our father's name. And that was great. And so now we get those 2 scholarships, but then my best friend passes away. Now the brother comes, the older brother, and says, listen, now we got to increase the scholarship to 4 $500 scholarships. So he donates $2,000 every year. Another family gives $1,000 and says, Coach Shaw, pick 2 scholarships. Another family donates $1,000, says, pick 2 scholarships. So this year we're giving out 9 scholarships at $4,500. I mean, they're $500, but the total is $4,500. That's a long way from giving out 1 scholarship for $250. So now that hustle I don't even have to do, these people come up to me and say, I want you to pick a scholarship recipient in your event in the name of such and such, because your event is where all the people go, and I want to keep the memory of my family member alive. And that's how it's going. So I think it's a good draw for the community. People look forward to it. People reach me in like February. I'm trying to set our family vacation up in the summer. Do you know which week is Osgood? And I'm like, it's always the second weekend in August. So it's on the calendar. I have people that tell their families, if you pick it on that date, that weekend, I ain't going on vacation. This is how big the Osgood's grown. So now you got the food, which has always been a part of it. But what we've done the last 2 years is we've had live entertainment. Mm-hmm. This is going to be our third year of live entertainment, but we've only had it on one day. This year we're doing it on 2 days. That brings a different draw of people, because you got to think, who's coming in here to watch basketball for 2 days for 8 hours a day? Not many. Some end up at the fish booth or the food booth. I'll see them after the tournament is over. They'll say, "Oh, coach, who ended up winning?" And I'm like, "What game you see?" "Man, I ain't see no games. I was out there by the music. I was out there by the food. So-and-so was there. We ended up talking, and then so-and-so came, and we ended." So it's like a reunion. It's like a reunion in our city, and people come in from all over. The different cities that come in, they know that the Osgood is a big thing to win the Osgood. So we give out the awards, of course, but we stop that for the older division, because, you know, we've given out medals and a trophy. Last 3 years, we stuck with the medals. So Byron says, "Why they ain't take the medals?" So I'm going to New Haven or Waterbury and say, "Oh man, here go the medals." He said, "Shaw, what we gonna do with medals? We don't need no medals. We just want the title. We just want the name. So don't be ordering no." So we don't do nothing for the open division. We just give them a team trophy and an MVP. No more individual awards, because they don't take them. You know, and why are we paying for these awards if they don't take them? So this year we'll come back with our girls division, which we haven't had since, I want to say maybe 12 or 13. But our high school team now, our girls in New Britain High School have a good team. Now it's time to bring them back and showcase the girls division. So last year after it was over, Byron said, "What did you do before that you're not doing now?" And I said, "We used to do a girls' high school." He said, "Well, why'd you stop?" And I said, "Because our teams weren't really that good, and we didn't want to have a tournament where teams are coming in from out of the city and winning the tournament." He said, "How are the girls now?" I said, "Our girls' team is pretty good now." He said, "Let's bring it back." So that's how the girls get back into the flow.
Nice.
So looking forward to a great time.
Nice. So with that coming up, you have the Osgood coming up. How can people get involved? How can people get in touch with you? How can people contribute and sponsors? What's the best way to do that?
So with the sponsors, what we do now, and they just have to reach me on, my number, Facebook or whatever. I'm not really a big social media guy, but all my information is there. So as far as our sponsors, this year we got 20 sponsors. And this is not what Byron has to pay for. We used to do just regular T-shirts. I had this sports store that came up with an idea 2 years ago. And they said, "We want to make uniforms for you. We want to create a store. And the way that you are going to help us is you can get some sponsors, and we're going to put their names on the jersey." And I was like, "Wait, it ain't going to cost me nothing?" He said, "No, they'll pay for it. So if you got 10 teams and you get 10 sponsors, we're going to put their name right on the jersey. And that's their give back, and that's how they're going to pay for the uniforms. And on top of that, we'll start a store where, proceeds after a certain amount can come to you." And I said, "Oh, wow, let me see what this looks like." And we started doing that. Byron doesn't have to pay for the team uniforms. It pays for itself through the sponsors. So we only go and try to get, like this year there's 20 teams, so I only went and got 20 sponsors. But people can reach out to me, and they do every year. They reach out to me and say, "Listen, I've been up at the tournament. How can I become a part of it?" They're either going to reach me through social media, or they're going to reach me because they know I'm at New Britain High School. And I have people that send me letters through the high school. "When the Osgood comes around, Coach, I'm so-and-so and so-and-so. Please reach out to me." And that's how I get them. That's just how I get them. Or, you do the TV interviews. I've been blessed to have Channel 30 come, Fox 61, all of them. So they see all of these things that's going on. And, of course, we give them a way to reach me through that. So it's been productive, and it's been good.
Got you. Only thing you're missing is ESPN.
Yeah, we're missing ESPN. Yes.
So ESPN, this is your moment right here in Connecticut. Grassroots. We will be seeing you the second week of August, and you could put on your calendar that's an annual. So no more trips. Tell Stephen A to get his behind back here off vacation. Molly's already in town. You know, come on down. We got some UConn alum here. She's always beating UConn, so come on down here.
Just show up.
And just show up. Just show up and just shoot out.
Yep. Show up at the shootout.
Show up at the shootout. Coach Shaw, this has been amazing. Before we leave the Bigger Play series, the motto here and the slogan here is "Prove the negative." What does that mean to you?
Well, my motto is simple. You're not a success to your community until you do something for your community. That's what I believe in. I've started this event. I listened to suggestions from a lot of different people. I have more than enough volunteers that want to come up and be part of it. But at this stage right now, you can have suggestions, but I think what we've been doing has been right so far, and I entertain all suggestions, but don't come and try to take over the Osgood, because it's not going to happen. So you're only a success until you do something in your community that makes everybody enjoy the time. So when you got people, like I said, figuring out their vacation time to attend a basketball tournament, you know you've arrived. Did I think this was going to be going on for, 33 years? I thought maybe after year 10, it had a good run. And like I said earlier, I mean, how do we get to 20? And then when we get to 25 and a guy like Kimba shows up, and I just said this simple to Kimba. I said, Kimba, we're celebrating year 25. And this is when I knew Kimba was all about it. And I said, Kimba, how can I get like Under Armour to make some uniforms? And I just needed a good price. He said, you know what you want on it? He said, send me something. And I just sent him Osgood Shootout. And I sent it to him, and he sends it back, and he said, Coach Shaw, how does this look? Or really, he didn't say Coach Shaw, because he always called me Mr. Shaw. He said, Mr. Shaw, how does this look? And I said, oh, man, that's great. He said, how many you need? I said, maybe just for the Final Four in the open division. So, you know, there's 4 teams, 10 on a team. So we're looking at 40. He said, nah, because you need an extra in case something happens. So let's do 11 on a team. And I said, yeah. I said, how much would it cost, something like that? And he says, I got it. And I said, wait, what do you mean you got it? He said, don't worry, I'm going to take care of it. They'll be mailed to you. I'll give you a date they're going to be mailed to you tomorrow. I'm going to reach out to my people, and I'll get back to you. He gets back to me the next day. He said, your uniforms will be there 4 days before the shootout. That's a relationship. Because who's going to do something like that? And Kimba did that for me. So that's when I knew we really arrived, celebrating 25 years. Here's a guy that's in the pros. And what else is funny that year is he should have won it that year. The next year, remember, they was on strike the year that he came in. The following year, they're back in action. But he had to go to the rookie symposium that year because they didn't have it the year before. He tells me, he says, Coach, I'm playing in it, but I'm at the symposium on this day. If we advance on Sunday, I'm able to play. So you know me, I'm doing the schedule. I got to make sure he advances. He flies in from the symposium. He flies into Bradley Field to be here for the shootout. And he brought, at the time, he had 2 7-footers. He had Charles Okawande. He had Gavin Edwards. Them cats was with him when they won it. That's how bad Kimba wanted to win. And they lost in that game. I think they lost by 2 in that game in the semifinals. But that's when I knew, I said, man, guys is flying in. Drummond is calling, his people is calling saying, Andre wants to know what date is the shootout. He's in. The media is going crazy because now I got all of these people. And of course, my main guy is Ryan. Ryan's played in more shootouts and won more shootouts out of all the pro players than anyone. I think Ryan won a total of 5. And just knowing Ryan from before he was this big star at Providence to when he went into the league, and our relationship has been the same. And Ryan was always one of the sponsors. He was always contributing. Coach Shaw, what you need? What you need me to donate? Those are real guys. So, when all of that started coming through, I was like, man, this is it. I mean, we can't get better than this. And then Jonathan Kaminga comes in after he finishes his freshman year out of high school. He's in the Osgood. And the one that brought him in, Brian Heron, Brian, who's a good friend, he said, man, you know, and at the time I had just Connecticut. You can't be out of Connecticut and play in the high school division. And Brian said, listen, man, he's number 2 in the whole country. He said, how can you not let him play? He said, I'm bringing him in with me. He said, he might go to Sacred Heart. Now, I knew he wasn't going to go to Sacred Heart, but he's entertaining Sacred Heart. So I bring in Kaminga, and little do you know, not only does he win it, he fools around and is a first-round lottery pick, 3 years down the road. So those are the kind of people that started coming in. So, between the lottery picks that I've had in here, everybody could have tournaments. But they only get in your tournament if they know that, number one, it's run the right way, you got great talent, and people enjoy coming. I've seen a lot of tournaments that people have that they don't take the outside stuff seriously, controlling the crowd, having something that they can enjoy outside of basketball, like, food, and then bringing in, you got to add those things, because once you add those, now you're bringing a different group of people. So people that come up to the Osgood now, a lot of them don't know nothing about basketball, but they come up because they know it's a good time and it's a reunion. So it makes me feel good that this thing has sustained itself as long as it has. And the other good thing is, there's areas I go to and travel. I could be in New York, I could be in Chicago, and I might run across somebody that got an Osgood shirt on, and I'm like, where you get that shirt at? Oh, my cousin is, from Connecticut. This is some big basketball tournament. And if I'm with Renee, my girlfriend all the time, she always says, do you let them know who you are? That you're like the one that started? I'm like, no, that's not important. I don't, that doesn't get me. We saw a young man the other day riding a bicycle. He had on the same exact shirt. We're riding, and I said to her, oh, there goes an Osgood shirt. He probably was 11, 12 years old. She said, oh, you should have stopped and said something. Like, you're the director of it. Where'd you get that shirt? I said, that ain't what I do. I said, but I'm blessed to see that. So when I see, because we got more gear all over the place, and when I see a Osgood, it takes me back to like 92 when this thing started. And a lot of stuff that started is done, and we're still going. So I got people that order shirts from Atlanta, North Carolina. They all ordering shirts. They like, oh, when those shirts available, I got to pick up something. And I'll go on social media and somebody will be wearing one of the shirts. It might be a shirt from 2010. One year we did a raffle. Who has the oldest shirt? And I wore a 92 shirt. And somebody had like a 98 shirt. They said, oh, coach, I win the raffle. I'm like, well, what am I wearing? 92, and it was an original shirt from 92. And they like, oh, but you can't win. You're the director. You probably got every shirt. I said, I do. So I ended up giving that person the shirt. But it just makes me feel good that what I've started with the group of people I started with, that is still going, and it's still going stronger than ever. And now I'm at the point where I need to put somebody on to how to run this thing when I decide to end it. Because why stop it? If it's going as good as it's been, just because I decide to stop don't mean it has to stop. But there's ways that you got to keep it going, and how do you keep it fresh? So that's our next chapter, to see where we're going with it, and see how, it's great, but how do we keep it? How do we keep it going?
I love it. So you have the Osgood tournament coming up. Family atmosphere, community involvement. There's nothing better than the community roots than grassroots. And with that coming up, 33 year, the God year, it's only going to be blessings going forward. Coach Shaw, I appreciate you coming on the Bigger Play series.
This is like, listen, I didn't got to the point where I'm on this. I'm used to doing a little interview with some media people. Never have I sat down and did anything that's even close to this. And I just appreciate you for showing the love, number one, to have me on. And, listen, you need something done, Jay is the guy. Phoenix Films, you got to get with him. Because listen, I'm here after 33 years. Give this brother an opportunity and give him a chance, because he's definitely top shelf. Top shelf, number one, for just taking his time to interview me in this process. And I think we've known each other for maybe a week. And I'm just grateful to him, and again, grateful to God for putting us together, because again, he's made this happen. So I wish you nothing but blessings and love moving forward in all the stuff that you do, and I'm really appreciative of this opportunity.
Like we say, brother, the path has already been written, our paths just crossed, brother.
God bless you.
Appreciate
my man.
Shaw. My name's Jordan Edward. This is the Bigger Play series. Stay tuned to the next episode.